Welcome back to the channel. I'm playing 20 questions with.
Rob Sanchez of Rob's Penworks, also known by the community at large as the Glitter Guy.
All right. Well, that's a fitting spot on this channel. We're a fan of sparkle here, so let's get into the questions. When I say fountain pen, what pen do you think of?
So I think of a lot of different things, and I've heard how other people's responses, but when you actually ask me like what fountain pen do I think of, I immediately think of the filling mechanism, the nib, the experience of extracting ink from a bottle, and the flow of the nib over paper, and the sound, and necessarily the feedback. But I don't really think about a specific brand. Um, but I think if I were to do, a self plug, I would say I think about glitter and sparkly pens because that's something that I've pretty much become all about over the last 5 years.
Fair enough. How did you get into pens?
So about 9 years ago, my neighbor uh, offered to teach me how to make a wooden pen because I had gotten a kit as a gift, and I love these cigar style ballpoint pens. And so he invited me over, and one Saturday, it was Memorial Day of 2015. We started hanging out early in the morning. He showed me the gist of how to get it done. I made a Koa cigar fountain pen, or sorry, a Koa cigar pen, and invited myself back the next day, made another cigar pen. And then the next thing that you know, I'm starting to do a lot of research, talked my wife into letting me go down to Rockler, bought a lathe that Sunday, spent the next day setting up the lathe in the garage, and the rest kind of just snowballed from there. Discovered the pen maker's Bible. And it's like the best and worst thing to buy because then you flip through it and you discover kitless fountain pens, you discover the Pentel kitless pencil setup, and all these other different writing instruments that you can create using a lathe. So that's kind of how I got started off with it. And somehow or another, back in 2019, a young gentleman around the same age as myself named John McCluskey, also known as Midwest Hybrids, started following me. And in my mind, he was like one of the most amazing, phenomenal casters. And he came up with all these crazy things. He's the one that created the faux burl fountain pen blank, or sorry, the faux burl blank, which I use today in my fountain pens. And so in 2020, I was experimenting with his materials, and I was calling him and asking him, like, hey, John, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? I need you to tweak this. I need these colors. I need this to be this long. And he's like, okay, my vibe is I make what I think is cool. I chop it up, and it sells like hotcakes. He's like, I think for you, what we need to do is we need to teach you how to do this. I'm going to teach you how to make silicone molds. I'm going to teach you how to take your casting game and modify it so that you can cast glitter. So in 2020, we started down that road, and it started off as just one person from Germany. Her name is Kat. I'm going to give her the shout out, Medi Wolf, and she had requested this glitter pen that had these beautiful butterflies and mother of pearl. And she asked John, "Hey, who can make this for me? I want to order a fountain pen from this." And John's like, "I don't do that. I just make blanks, but I'm going to send you to my buddy, and he's going to fix you up." Because John had casted these translucent blanks with real burl and asked me to make him an X-Acto knife. So this is an example of an X-Acto knife.
Which are
And
you posted them a couple days ago. I have received so many DMs from people going, "Have you seen this?" Which is
yeah,
the same message I sent to you, which is this is so unbelievably cool.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So anyways, it snowballed from there. So the point I'm bringing up is that back in 2020, it started with one phenomenal lady asking for this specific glitter pen. To today now, the vibe that everybody's known, or the vibe that comes up is this concept of a of a faux burl center with the glitter on the ends, right? So that you can see what's going on the inside. And that's kind of been my signature style.
It
All
tastes,
right, shameless plug there, shameless plug.
it's a great discussion. What was your first fountain pen?
Okay, so my first fountain pen ever, I was 13 years old. We went to, I want to say Target or some store that happened to have a stationary aisle. Back in the day, like, Target and Kmart actually did have stationary aisles. And there was a Waterman kit of just a plain Jane Waterman fountain pen. It came with some cartridges, red, blue, green, purple, and it was $13. Now this is the 80s, so 13 bucks was affordable, but it wasn't like dirt cheap, but it wasn't super expensive. So I hit up my mom if she could fix me up with getting me the fountain pen, and she did. And that afternoon, if you were to come down in the living room and look at me, I had ink all over my t-shirt. My dad comes out from his room to check on something, looks over at me, and it's just like, oh my, what have you done? What is that? And I'm like, I'm just using my pen. Anyways, I'm 13. It's not like I'm a 5-year old, right? But still, ink everywhere. That was my first fountain pen. Just a plain Jane Waterman, and definitely a very memorable experience that I can still remember today.
Your driver.
It's okay, right? Because as adults, we get ink all over us, as it is now, right?
Constantly, all the time. I had an ink bottle explode last week on a sweater. Like I took the flat ink bottle flat on a table, turned, took the lid off, and there must have been an air bubble or some sort, and all of this. Like,
So, not part of the 20 questions, but as a maker, I have to fill and test all the pens. And every now and then I'll end up with the ink bubble that'll form on the bottle. And you don't think about it, and you go to pop the ink bubble with the nib. Exactly. And then now all of a sudden there is ink everywhere. Luckily, I know not to wear anything nice when I do this because you never know what's going to happen.
yeah. What's your current daily driver?
My current daily driver is this fountain pen that I made back in 2018. I call it the Engineer, um, kind of named after me. I'm a mechanical engineer. It's a very smooth cigar style, tapers on one side, but flat end on the other with, it's going to be hard to see, with an octopus in the finial.
Lovely.
This is what I've been using. And what I find interesting is if you actually use something that you've made, you'll discover things about it that you really love, and you'll discover things about it that you don't. This has, at the time, what I thought was a decent shape for a section. And today I use more of a bell, and I pull the bell as far forward as possible. Also, when you run the same cartridge on a regular basis, you'll discover which cartridges do not last longer than 9 months and which ones will last a very long time. So I'm a big proponent of the K2 or the K1 and not the K5. And I know there's a lot of people who think the K5 is the bee's knees, but it eventually delaminates after the 9 month mark if you use it every day.
What's your favorite ink?
Okay, so my favorite ink. So there's the ink that I really, really love in terms of just color, and that's turquoise. Um, the Ackerman turquoise, fantastic. I love the fact that it has this special reservoir with the check ball glass that locks the ink in. You flip it over, it fills, you flip it back, ink stays, and now you can reload any pen. Just love the engineering and the functionality behind this. But I will say that Yamaburo um, Iruzuku ink from Pilot is just phenomenal. I inadvertently have bought a few of these bottles. I think you and I were chatting the other day, and I told you I checked the drawer and I got three of these guys. This is one of the full ones, not the one that I'm halfway through. This ink, though, in any pen, regardless if it's tuned, not tuned, if I give it to somebody and try to finagle them, They just love the way this ink interacts with the paper and they love the color. It's just a lot of positive things to say. But my heart wants to write in turquoise. But the experience with the way that this ink works with any paper, any pen is just phenomenal.
Yeah. Favorite brand of either pens or ink?
So favorite brands of inks have to say are Pilot. Uh, I just they're just fantastic. I know it's kind of basic, but I love Pilot. And then in regards to pens, I am a sucker for a Parker Vacuumatic from the 1930s. Paper wants a pen. Stacy's a really good friend slash mentor. He's up in the Los Angeles area, not too far from where I am in San Diego County. And he's fixed me up with a lot of various Parkers. And we'll talk about those when we get to the vintage section.
Vintage Parkers are fun.
Yes.
Vintage or modern?
So if I am going to purchase a pen that's commercially manufactured, I'm a sucker for vintage. This wall Eversharp in the multi-sided body uh, is was slash is one of the Grail pens I was on a quest for, and uh, Paper Wants a Pen posted this baby at one of the pen shows. I want to say it was the SF pen show in 2023, and I'm here at the house. I couldn't go, and I see that flash across Instagram, and I immediately am texting him back like, mine, 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 please. Um, the other one, not a Grail, but just really cool, is the Vacuumatic in the Dusty Rose. Um, this is a 1944. The colors in this pen are just outstanding. Hopefully you'll make it maybe one day to SF, and I can show you what this looks like in person.
It is on the list as a someday, hopefully.
Yeah,
Do you swatch all your inks?
I do, but I am not the fanciest of swatchers. So this is my swatch book. I started doing the swatching based off of color genres,
Okay.
you know, and then I got into this whole is it blue green kind of situation. Um, this is nowhere near the level of swatching that one would brag about, especially at a pen show when you see individuals roll up with binders, five different types of paper, slash cardstocks, all testing out the same ink and showing how the colors can shift. I think when I started swatching, that was probably the biggest thing that I learned was um, this this red ink in this notebook looks like orange, and that's a function of the paper. So then I thought, I might have to get another swatch book that shows the more of the red, and then you'd have a better idea of how your ink's going to present on the paper that you use.
Yeah. What I like about the coloring dippers is that I can move them around. Like if I decide that something is maybe more blue than it is green.
Yeah, yeah, it's a brilliant idea.
I also am not one of those. I swatch on two different papers, sometimes three, but not more than that. Even that seems like a lot sometimes.
I do have friends that swatch, I want to say, across five papers. And I think one of the five might be a cardstock, but
I only,
it's
yeah, I only swatch on the paper I use. Otherwise, it just seems like a lot.
which makes sense. Which makes sense because then you know what you're going to get.
Yeah. Do you daily drive the same ink and pen combinations, or do you switch it up?
So I used to for about 4 years. The pen that I showed earlier, turquoise ink, and at the time it was Pelikan. I was running the Pelikan turquoise ink. The Pelikan turquoise ink is what I currently use to test all the pens that I make. I test every single nib that goes out the door, and I don't mean just dip and write. What I've discovered is that you have to fully assemble everything and actuate the converter. 1 in 50 of a specific nib manufacturer, I won't say which one, will dump the entire converter out if the pen is laying horizontal. Most people don't burn through 100 or 50 nibs, so they probably won't ever see this. But if you're actually getting nibs from a commercial manufacturer and you're testing them all out. Like I said, my track record's about 1 in 50, so I've had about 4 or 5 of them do it to me now, and at least I know what they look like. So um, yeah, I'll leave it at that. Sorry, I went off on a tangent.
When this is done, I will ask you a question off camera because
Yeah.
um yeah. Do you swatch? Do you have writing samples for your nibs, or do you just know the nib in every pen?
So I do not because I know how the nibs behave, and I tend to buy very specific grinds from very specific nibmeisters who I know their X type nib is always going to behave the same way because they're very methodical, right? Penrom, Kirk
Yeah.
at Penrom's very, very, very good friend of mine, and he is so consistent in what he does that I just know what to order from him. I don't have to test it. I don't have to do anything. In fact, it might arrive, I'll ink it up, won't even try to write with it, head straight to work, it's going to work. Um,
I recommend Kirk all the time on this
yeah,
sh on many shows that I do. Never had a nib done by Kirk. He's just been lovely.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Kirk's a great guy. I'm a good and horrible friend all at the same time because whenever there's a show, I try to grab him the day before. Like he's barely walking in, and I'm already handing him 4 pens, and I'm like, here you go. I leave in 3 days. I'll grab these from you on the last day. Thank you very much. Um,
that is, I already have plans with somebody at Chicago about that with another Nimbmeister.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. I need to be a little more thoughtful as a friend and maybe mail him out to him so he's not trying to squeeze me in. But love his work.
almost always walk-up appointments at a pen show.
Yeah,
You don't feel too.
exactly.
What's a pen you wish you'd see in person?
Okay, so I've watched some of your other shows and I've heard some of the other responses, and it's interesting where everybody goes with it. I'm very much into sparkle. Let's just be honest, right? I mean, because that's the first thing you think of when you look at me as sparkle. Um, Dr. Sophia at Urushi Notes is a very, very good friend of mine. We've been talking for years now. Her work, I've only been able to see via Instagram or through photos that she sent me. I would love to see something in person, whether it's her Moon Man disco ball or uh, some of the latest work that she just recently released. A good friend of mine bought the owl. um, I saw somebody else had got this beautiful bell-shaped flower. I should have taken note of what the flower was called, but just her artistry is phenomenal, and seeing the level of progression in the complexity of her artwork and the layers that goes into her Urushi work is just mind-blowing and breathtaking all the time. So anything from Sophia, I would love to see in person. And shamelessly, I will say that I have contacted her about putting in a commission. I am dying to get her to make something for me because I gotta own something from her. Yeah.
What's your current grail?
The current grail is a pen from Sophia,
Yeah,
and I'm
fair.
working through getting that taken care of. The prior grail to that was the Stanford Studio, and they put out this steampunk octopus meets engineering, beautiful piece of art that I saw it, and I'm like, I'm going to give it 3 days, give somebody else a chance to get it. But if it's still there on the third day, I'm taking it. Third day came, it was still available, jumped on it. Super ecstatic about Stanford Studios, and I believe Hannah was the artist that did that work.
They put out some really cool stuff recently.
Mhm.
I like stalking their Instagram.
Yeah.
What's a pen you'd recommend to a beginner?
So I've thought a lot about this, and I know that a lot of people will throw out the preppy. or I think both Sailor and Pilot put out something just recently that's more beginner. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and I'm going to say one of the Narwhal Vacuumatics in the US, they're $55. So for $55, you can get a Vacuumatic. Um, if you buy them from Penrealm, right, you can have them tune it and grind it. So in the 55 to $100 range, you can have a fully tricked out pen to your liking that has a phenomenal fill system, large volume. And, when you fully close the system up, that plunger cuts off the feed, the flow of ink to the feed so that if you're running around with this and you're not somebody who's used to carrying a fountain pen, you're not running around with something that's going to jettison quite a bit of ink on you when you go to take the cap off because you've been mishandling it. I think the Vacuumatic has that kind of safety mechanism that would allow a beginner to kind of have a pleasant experience. Um, so that's my answer for what I'd recommend for a beginner.
What ink would you recommend to a beginner?
I think I kind of went off on a monologue on that one, like I was an evildoer on one of the cartoons, and it's uh, the Yamabudu Wild Grapes by Pilot.
Not the first time that has come up as this answer.
Yeah, it's phenomenal ink.
I own other bottles of Iroshizuku, but I don't own a bottle of Yamabudo. It's one of those inks that I always go, I need to buy that. And then it never ends up in my cart. But I love it. I've got a sample of it that I adore.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
What advice would you have for somebody who might be a bit intimidated by fountain pens?
So I think it's one of those things when you talk to somebody about cooking, right? You got to work. You got to work with your hands. You're going to get dirty. It's all part of the experience. Same thing with fountain pens. Most of us have some faint ink spot on our finger because we over gripped past the section and our fingers are up against the feed, and it's just part of the experience. There's nothing to fear. It's just recognize the fact that you'll probably get a little ink on your hands, and that's okay. That's expected. Nobody's judging you. Most of us who do use fountain pens find it odd if somebody has immaculate hands all the time, right? Maybe you're not having enough fun if you don't have at least a little ink on your hands.
I like that. What filling mechanism do you think is most interesting, regardless of if you actually like to use it or not?
So I thought a lot about this question, and part of me wants to say, the vacuumatic because we've been talking about it a lot today, but Toma in Japan has some wild fill systems. I don't know their official names. All I will say is if you were to look at Toma's Instagram and flip through their various posts, you will see one where you start to unscrew the back and interesting mechanical things start to occur with the pen. I don't want to describe it any more than that because I'm going to totally ruin it in terms of misexplaining what's going on, right?
Link to their Instagram down below.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, right after them would probably be the Cusado, but other people have mentioned that. CY came up with an amazing system there, but I would check out what Toma is doing if you want to just see something that's very different.
Right. What nib size do you prefer to write with?
So when I first started, I was writing a lot at work. Work has crap paper, so extra fine, as dry as possible, because on crap paper, it's leaving a broad line and it's bleeding slightly. Now that I'm controlling the types of paper that I use, I have, random journals that have proper paper in them. Uh, I've started to go bigger, um, and I'll write with a broad now or a medium. I do write with a fude on occasion for thank you notes, and then you go really big with the fude. So yes, I'm all over the spectrum, but I'm a die-hard extra fine fine. I have maybe 6 or 8 architects that are extra fine fine from Kirk.
I need to get an architect that's a fine.
You
I
know,
I
a
find.
lot of people will tell you that the extra fine architect or the fine architect don't give you enough line variation, and the argument goes on and on. But as somebody who's driven one on a regular basis, you can see the flair, just the extra little bit of style that it adds to your writing. Is it in your face and obvious? No. But when you write with it versus the standard extra fine or fine, you can see that it does something extra to your script, and it's very pleasant to the eye. So I highly recommend.
Like my favorite nib grind is a mini stub. Like mini stubs are a fine that's been turned into a stub or an extra fine that's been turned into a stub. I already like nibs on that end of the scale.
I have not seen that. Now you're giving me something that I have to hit up Kirk or CY the next time I see him and say, hey, do you guys have one of these? I want to play with it.
It's the one that does them for Estabrook.
Ah, okay. All right.
Um, Matthew Chen did one for me on a Pelican as well.
Nice. Nice.
Is there a style of nib you love or find interesting but would never actually use?
So back to custom ground nibs, Monty Winfield, aka Jeremiah. Jeremiah does some phenomenal work. Known him for years. Back in 2016, he was working on rings and some other things. And then at some point, he transitioned over and became I'm going to stick my neck out and say one of the world's best nib artists or artisans. His whale is phenomenal. I do own a whole set of like pilot parallels, but part of me is like, I want to play with the whale. And then you think about what am I going to use the whale on? Maybe writing thank you cards, right? Or get well cards where you want to write thank you really largely on the face of the card. But aside from that, I don't have a use case that would require something of that nature. Yeah.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, most people who have them use them for art.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
I have gotten to play with one. I've gotten to play with both a ring and one of the whale tails.
Nice. What did you think?
Oh, both are so much fun. Could I justify having either? No. But did I enjoy having them in my hands for 5 minutes? Yeah.
I will say, since you want to get an architect, he does make the XL, and I do have the XL. It is fantastic, and it's much larger than any other uh, BB or B X architect you're going to get from one of the other manufacturers. I think he's modifying the tipping. I'm not sure on that, but it is phenomenal. Highly recommend it. If you do come to SF, I will have it in my bag because it is on one of my pins. So,
Do you always use the same paper? If so, what paper? If not, what paper do you prefer?
so I do always use the same paper. I write a thank you note with everything that I make, and I stamp it. I write with a fountain pen. I usually test the nib out all on said paper, and it gets a wax seal. And it's this behemoth right here,
Oh,
the HP 32 Premium. Runs about 20 bucks for 500 sheets. It's thick, it's heavy, it takes a beating. Is it super fancy like Midori or Tome River? No, but it works really well with the fountain pen inks that I use, and it's very consistent, so I'm able to tell whether or not a pen's misbehaving.
mhm. I like a reasonably priced paper.
Yeah, so do
What,
I.
yeah. What is your least favorite ink or ink color family?
It's not the color,
Oh,
it's just this ink.
mm.
Uh, I wanted to love this ink. So I actually got to go to Amsterdam 2 years ago. Bought this at the Ackerman store in Amsterdam proper, not to be confused with the Den Haag store. And I bought this ink, and I thought, all right, great, awesome. I got something that I'm going to use. You know, very much my vibe with all the glitter. The bottle looks amazing. The color looks amazing. It is so bone dry. Even in the wettest, largest nib, I have, you know, the pen that I have the worst time with because it might flow too much, bone dry. Um, Probably good use with a dip pin, but would not recommend the Graph von Faber-Castell uh, Yozakura
No.
for use in a fountain pen.
Have you tried something like white lightning with it?
No, I have not. That's something I didn't think about. That might help.
It's not something that I own, it's just something people recommend a lot.
Yeah. So Pilot did release a bunch of pinks recently. So I did buy a very close Irizuku pink. I can't remember the exact name of it. It's in my office. So I've been loading that up in one of my other pens because I do normally have a pink in one of the pens in my pen roll.
Mm. Having a pink pen inked up is always great.
Oh, yeah, definitely a lot of sparkle, a lot of colors in the pen roll.
Sparkle and color, you've come to the wrong place. I'm not the person to have that conversation with.
We did have somebody walk by our table. So San Francisco this last year's White Bear,
Yeah.
Michaela was kind enough to share her table with me, and we'll be sharing again this year. And we are making these constant jokes about being the Sparkle siblings or the Sparkle twins because both of us have a very bright and glittery vibe. And this person walks by and is like, nothing at this table uh, speaks to me or something of that nature. But it was like very non-friendly. Or I remember, I don't love anything at this table, and I'm gonna keep going. And Michaela and I look at each other, and we're like, that's cool, no worries. But you didn't have to like broadcast it to the world, but that's cool. It's okay. I'm sure somebody sells a black pen in this place. So
Life's better with sparkles.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I, I
Well,
like I like adding color to things. My first pen was black that I made, and since then, it's pretty much been all about the color now.
well, thanks for playing 20 questions.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.